My dad and sister had a National Day reunion without me, so I sold their $3.6M house. I never expected to find out through a Facebook tag. It was National Day, the kind of holiday our family used to spend together, wrapped in little traditions that made our broken dynamics bearable. A red and white cake, a photo in front of the flag, and Dad's ritual toast to what this country made possible for us. But this year, no one called, no message, no invite. Instead, I opened my phone at 9:43 a.m. and saw a tag from my cousin Jenny. Such a lovely reunion. Morgan Strong National Day 2025. I clicked, and there it was. My father, my sister, my entire extended family, standing in front of the house I paid to restore. The house where I used to live. The house that was in my name. My father, Richard Morgan, was mid-toast, glass raised, beaming with pride. My sister Emma stood next to him, her red party dress hugging her like she was the star of the show. Around them, uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't seen in years all smiling, and not one of them noticed I wasn't there. I stared at the image for longer than I cared to admit. The banner behind them read, Morgan Family National Day, rebuilding together. Rebuilding what? Exactly. They'd rebuilt something all right. A new version of our family, one that excluded me. I'm Lena Morgan, 36 years old, CFO at a fintech firm I helped scale from seed stage to IPO. I've never asked for much from my family. When Mom passed, I was the one who held Dad's hand at the funeral, the one who cleaned out the storage unit while Emma went on a healing trip to Miami. When the house started falling apart, termites, foundation damage, plumbing disaster, I was the one who paid the contractor's invoices. They lived in it. I paid for it. Dad said we'd sort out the title later. I had just turned 30. I still trusted him. So I poured in over 120, high, low, zero, and more hours of work than I can count. I negotiated permits. I met the inspectors. I chose the floorboards. But somehow, I still didn't get a seat at the family table. That morning, I sat frozen on the edge of my couch, still in pajamas, watching video after video that guests had posted from the party. There was Emma, giving a speech about legacy. There was Dad, talking about how this house represents generations of strength. No one mentioned me. No one said, "Where's Lena?" No one wondered aloud why the person who actually owned the damn house wasn't there. I think the worst part wasn't being excluded. It was being erased. Like I never mattered. Like my efforts, my money, my grief, my loyalty were all invisible. I tried calling Dad. No answer. I texted Emma, "Hey, did I miss something?" She replied, 20 minutes later, "Oh hey, we thought you'd be in Singapore or something." Was kinda last minute, but everything went smoothly. I stared at that emoji for a full minute. I'd sent Emma €5 for her rent just 2 months ago. I'd helped get her out of a sketchy situation with an ex, let her crash on my couch. But I was apparently too busy to be included. I should have expected it. Emma always had a way of taking and forgetting. But this time, it wasn't just inconsiderate. It was deliberate. Later that afternoon, I opened the folder, the one titled, Morgan House, Title and Deed. I had created it the day I finalized the transfer, quietly, without fanfare. Dad had signed the quitclaim deed in a moment of temporary gratitude, as he put it. I hadn't told anyone else, not Emma, not the cousins, not even Jenny. Maybe part of me wanted to protect them. Maybe I still hoped that one day, we'd all sit down at that massive oak dining table and act like a real family. But that day wasn't coming. Not after this. I poured myself a glass of wine, cheap Merlot, bitter as hell, and stepped out onto my balcony. The city skyline stretched before me, behind the glass door. My apartment was spotless, organized, mine. It hit me then. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need a seat at their table. Because I owned the house they were sitting in. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just angry. I was done. You know that moment in stories when the main character shifts. It's not loud. It's not violent. It's quiet. Like a lever clicking into place. That was me, on that balcony, sipping bitter wine, looking at a city that had never once lied to me. I took a deep breath, opened my phone again, and texted my attorney. How fast can we initiate the sale of the Morgan property? 2 days after National Day, I stood on the sidewalk in front of the house. Not a house, my house. And yet, as I stared up at the familiar gabled roof, the restored shutters I handpicked, the flower beds I'd replanted in Mom's honor, I felt like an outsider, like I was about to knock on the front door of a memory someone else had stolen. There was no welcome mat, no family waiting inside, just a trash bin full of plastic plates and a bunch of deflated red and white balloons tangled in the rose bushes. My rose bushes, the same ones I replanted with heirloom clippings from my mother's journal notes. They were trampled, dead petals scattered like confetti. I clenched the key in my hand, not some symbolic key to the heart, the actual house key, and I let myself in. The smell hit me first like someone had spilled cologne, wine, and grease into the air and just let it soak. Inside, it looked like the aftermath of a wedding and a frat party had collided. The hardwood floors I had refinished last year, sticky, the antique rugs I spent 3 weekends restoring, folded into corners and covered in footprints. My mother's antique mirror, moved. Why? So they could hang up a Family First poster. I walked down the hallway slowly, not really sure what I was expecting. Apology cards, a note taped to the fridge. No, what I found was Emma's voice, coming from the kitchen, laughing. I stepped into the room. She turned. Her smile froze mid-sentence. Lena, she blinked. What are you doing here? I didn't answer right away, mostly because I was trying to process the scene in front of me. Dad was sitting at the breakfast table, nursing a second cup of coffee. Emma had clearly just finished cleaning up the kitchen with her friend still in a tank top and leggings, barefoot, sipping orange juice. The audacity. They weren't even trying to pretend. I live here, I finally said, placing my bag on the counter with a quiet thud. I came to see the condition of my property. Emma glanced at Dad. Lena, we thought you were still in Singapore, Dad said, standing slowly. I was never in Singapore, I said. But even if I was, when exactly did my house become your party venue? Emma rolled her eyes. It was just a get-together. A National Day reunion. You're always so dramatic. Was it your idea to move the furniture? I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, measured. Emma looked defensive. It was for photos. You know, lighting and symmetry. You always say good lighting matters. Remember, I walked into the living room. The family photos were gone from the shelves, replaced with new ones I wasn't in. Pictures from the party photos printed overnight, already framed. Where's the painting that hung above the mantel? I asked. Oh, that old thing. Emma shrugged. Dad thought it was a little depressing. We stored it in the garage. That painting was the last one Mom ever made. She painted it the year before she died, a muted blue landscape. Haunting but honest. Right, I said, quietly. I opened the closet near the stairs. My coat, gone. My umbrella, gone. In their place, guest coats, party favors, and someone's leftover purse. Is my bedroom still upstairs? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Dad's expression tightened. We used it for storage during the event. Did you now? I climbed the stairs. The door was open. Inside, boxes, plastic bins, a stack of folding chairs, a helium tank. They had used my room to store party supplies, the same room I had filled with my mother's books, the quilt she left me, and a cedar chest with her wedding dress folded inside. All of it was crammed into a corner, shoved to the side like clutter. Back downstairs, I found Dad leaning on the kitchen counter. You didn't have to come barging in like this, he said quietly. I used my key. You could have called first. Oh, like you called me to let me know you were using my house without permission. Dad said nothing. Emma crossed her arms. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. No, Emma, I said, voice steady. You did that. When you planned a family reunion behind my back, when you invited people into my home, when you erased me from the photos, when you treated this house like it was yours to use, decorate, and damage. Her mouth opened, then shut. I could tell she was about to cry. Tears had always been her shortcut to sympathy. But not today. I walked to the study. The door creaked open. Inside, dust lingered in shafts of light. Grandma's writing desk was pushed to the side. Her clock was unplugged. And, in the corner, my mother's armchair, the one she used to read in, was covered in what looked like red wine stains. The final straw, a framed sign sitting crooked on the bookshelf. Home is where your people are. No, home is where respect is. And clearly, I wasn't their people anymore. I turned back to them, voice low and firm. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Emma gasped. Are you evicting us? Dad stared at me, stunned. You don't mean that. Oh, I said. I mean every word. I pulled out the folder from my bag, dropped it on the table. The house is in my name. I've spoken to legal. This is not a discussion. And then I walked out, leaving behind not just a house, but a history they had rewritten without me. The first 3 days were quiet, too quiet. No door slamming, no phone calls, not even a passive-aggressive email from Dad, which was his usual tactic when he felt cornered but didn't want to look petty. I almost believed they were packing. Almost. Until day 4. That morning, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. A breathless woman introduced herself as a friend of Emma's, saying she just wanted to clarify a few things before sending out the evite for the second half of the Morgan family weekend. I stared at my phone, mouth slightly open. Second half. Was she seriously planning to extend the event after I gave them a legal warning? I called my lawyer, Samuel, immediately. Send them an official notice. Certified. Include everything ownership documents. The clause about unauthorized use. And the 30-day deadline. I want them to know this isn't symbolic. Samuel's voice was calm, steady. He had known my family dynamic for years. Do you want us to deliver it personally? I paused. Yes. Let them sign for it. Let them feel the weight of the paper. On day 5, they called. Well, Emma called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was a breathy mix of faux shock and sugary sarcasm. Lena. Wow. A lawyer. Really? You couldn't just talk to us like adults? Dad is really upset. He hasn't been sleeping. Neither have I. I thought you'd cooled down by now, but I guess I underestimated how petty you can be. She paused before finishing with, Anyway, I hope you're happy. Because this is family destruction, and you're the one lighting the match. I played it twice, then deleted it. I didn't need Emma's theatrics echoing in my brain. That weekend, I drove to the house again. No warning, just me, in jeans and a windbreaker, pulling up the driveway I had paid to repave. The house looked the same, but my gut told me something had shifted. And I was right. There were more cars this time, more shoes on the porch, more laughter bleeding out through the walls. I walked up to the door. It was unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, Emma was in the kitchen again, this time wearing my mother's apron. The blue one with hand-embroidered daisies. I froze. It felt like someone had reached into the past and pulled out something fragile and dirtied it. Oh, she said, flipping her hair. Didn't expect you. I stared at the apron, then met her eyes. You're still planning events? Emma scoffed. It's not an event. It's just dinner. Some people wanted to come by. You can't control who Dad invites into his home. It's not his home, I said evenly. It's mine. Right. The Queen has arrived, she muttered. Before I could reply, Dad appeared from the hallway. He looked tired. His eyes had bags. His hair was more silver than I remembered. But his tone, still sharp. Is this really what you want? Lena, to make a legal war out of a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. You excluded me, then pretended I didn't exist, then used my house like it was yours. He stepped closer. I gave you life, raised you, paid your tuition, and now you're evicting me over a party. I felt the words rise in my throat, hot and bitter. I paid for this house. I restored every board and beam. I protected Mom's garden. You abandoned all of it. You didn't even think to tell me about the party. It wasn't personal, he said, eyes flaring. But it was. I snapped. You just won't admit it. The silence after that was dense. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Dad looked away. Then came the whisper. I thought you'd grown out of this, he muttered. This need to be the victim. I blinked. For a moment, I was 10 years old again, holding my report card. Being told I rubbed it in when I got good grades. I felt my hands clench involuntarily, but this time, I didn't back down. "I'm not a victim," I said. "I'm a woman drawing a boundary." He didn't respond. Instead, he picked up his mug and walked out of the room. Emma trailed behind him, apron still wrapped around her like she belonged in that house more than I did. On day 10, the social media posts started again. Photos of quiet evenings and last memories in the Morgan house. Emma posed with guests like it was a reality show finale. "Can't believe this chapter is ending. Grateful heart." I nearly laughed. Grateful. For what? For disrespect. For free rent. For rewriting history. Still, I said nothing publicly. Let them post. Let them build whatever version of the story helped them sleep. Because I had the one thing they couldn't filter. Hashtag or Photoshop. Control. By day 15, the notice period was halfway over. And yet, nothing had been packed. Not one box. Not a single moving truck scheduled. Instead, Dad sent an email. Short. Formal. "Lena, I believe it would be in the best interest of the family to discuss a possible co-ownership agreement before further action. Let me know if you're open to reasonable terms." I stared at it for a long time, then clicked reply. No, the deadline remains. 15 days left. No anger, no emotion, just fact. For the first time in my life, I wasn't negotiating for love, approval, or peace. I was reclaiming my place, and the silence that followed. It was the sound of power shifting. It was day 22, 8 days left. That's how I counted time now, not in weekends, not in holidays, but in deadlines. 8 days until they were legally required to leave. 8 days until I could step into my own house without feeling like a trespasser. But something was gnawing at me, that unease you feel before a storm, not because you hear thunder, but because the air is too quiet, too still. I decided to do what my gut had been telling me since the beginning. Walk the house. Alone. No warning, no texts, no performance. It was mid-morning when I arrived. I parked a block away, partly to avoid confrontation, partly because I didn't want Emma filming my arrival for content. I entered with my key. The front door squeaked. A distant vacuum hummed upstairs. I called out once. No answer. The house was not empty, but unoccupied, like a theater between shows. Chairs askew, lights off, but the scent of drama still clinging to the curtains. I started in the hallway. Scratches on the wall paint, scuff marks on the staircase rail. The kind of wear that didn't come from living but from ignoring. I moved through each room deliberately. The parlor was filled with half-folded linens. The kitchen sink had a stack of mugs with lipstick stains. The fridge was still packed. They weren't packing. They were stalling. Or worse, pretending I wouldn't follow through. I made my way to the study Mom's favorite room, the place where she'd light a candle every evening and read for exactly 1 hour. I reached for the door handle. It stuck. Odd. I pushed gently, and that's when the smell hit me. Smoke. Not fresh, but not old. Either like something had burned, and someone tried to cover it up. Inside, my breath caught. The mahogany bookshelf against the far wall Dad's prized possession was scorched, blackened along the lower edge. I stepped closer, heart pounding. The floor beneath it had a melted electrical socket. A small pile of ash sat next to a scorched extension cord. A candle, one of the cheap ones Emma bought in bulk from discount stores, vanilla spice, or something equally nauseating. I looked up. The wallpaper was curling from the heat, but what stopped me was what was beneath the peeled paper. Char, soot, and a handprint. Someone had tried to wipe it clean. Someone had hidden the damage. My throat tightened. They had almost burned down the room my mother used to sit in. The room I had preserved like a shrine to her calm. The one space that still felt like her. And they didn't even tell me. No apology, no call, no insurance report. Just silence and a cover-up job that wouldn't fool a blind man. I took photos. Dozens. Angles. Lighting. Close-ups of the socket. Then I sat in Mom's chair, carefully avoiding the burn, and stared out the window. Shaking, It wasn't just a candle, it was a metaphor. They had set fire to the last piece of her I had, and then tried to pretend it didn't happen. I remembered Emma's post from 2 days ago. The Morgan home has weathered generations of love, grateful to carry that legacy forward. Legacy. They wouldn't know legacy if it was stitched into their skin. This house wasn't just wood and paint. It was the only thing Mom left behind. And now they had scorched it. And lied. I stood and moved down the hall. Then I saw it. In the guest room, formerly the storage room, sitting openly on the desk. A draft of a social media sponsorship contract. Emma's name. A PR company's logo. Proposed partnership. Morgan Family Legacy Project. They were monetizing it. Turning my mother's house into a backdrop for a brand. Hashtags. Video content. Sponsored posts. I wasn't just being written out. I was being replaced. My hands shook as I took the papers. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront. This wasn't about drama anymore. It was about clarity. They had shown me again and again who they were. I finally believed them. That night, I met with Samuel again. Over dinner, in a quiet restaurant. He looked at the photos. The burn. The PR contract. He put down his fork. You could sue. I nodded. Not yet. But I want to move up the exit timeline. Find out what it takes to issue a 72-hour notice under unsafe occupancy. He tilted his head. You're serious? I looked him in the eye. They set fire to the only room that mattered, and tried to sell the ashes. As I left the restaurant, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail from Emma. I didn't listen. I already knew the tone. Fake tears. Deflection. Probably something about forgiveness and being sisters. But forgiveness isn't granted where remorse doesn't live. And I was done renting space in my soul to people who didn't pay for it. 3 days. That's what I gave them. 72 hours to gather their things, pack their lies, and leave the house they'd desecrated. No more passive notices. No more gentle nudges. No more pretending they'd do the right thing on their own. They wouldn't. They'd proven that. So on day 23, I issued an official unsafe occupancy violation based on 3 things. Unreported fire damage, tampering with electrical sockets, hosting unauthorized gatherings in a private residential property. Samuel filed everything by 9:00 a.m. By noon, the letter had been hand-delivered, signed, stamped, non-negotiable. The countdown had begun. I didn't expect a thank you. But I didn't expect the retaliation either. At 6:43 p.m. that evening, my phone exploded with notifications. Emma had posted a story. Actually, several. And I was the villain in all of them. One showed a blurry photo of a flickering socket, the one she claimed barely sparked. Another showed her sobbing on the front steps, holding a box labeled Family Memories. It's just a house to her, she said, voice cracking. But to us, it's home. And now we're being thrown out like garbage. There were hashtags. Justice for dead. Sisters shouldn't do this. Morgan legacy stolen. I watched them all once, then turned off my phone. I wasn't playing the public sympathy game. Not this time. Not ever again. But I knew one thing. They weren't leaving peacefully. So I prepared accordingly. The next morning, I arrived with 2 professionals, a security consultant and a photographer. The security guy, Carlos, looked around the exterior, noting potential entry points, locks, blind spots. The photographer Dana took meticulous photos of everything. Scorched outlet, burned bookshelf, scratched floorboards, Emma's family legacy banner that was still duct-taped across the hallway. We'll have this documented and time-stamped, Dana said. Good, I replied, because they're going to claim I exaggerated everything. Carlos handed me a folder. Here's the security plan. New code locks. Camera install options. Motion sensors. We can secure the property once they're out. I exhaled. Not from relief. From resolve. Do it. All of it. Install the morning. They're gone. On day 24, the silence cracked. Emma showed up at my office, unannounced. Dressed in beige from head to toe, the uniform of someone trying to look put together when they're unraveling. The receptionist buzzed me. There's a woman here. Says she's your sister. I came down. She stood in the lobby like a protest sign with perfume. 3 days. Lena, she snapped. You want the whole family talking about how heartless you are? I folded my arms. They already are. Might as well give them something accurate. She flinched. You think this is what Mom would have wanted? The way she said Mom like it was a weapon. Like she thought invoking her would make me hesitate. But it had the opposite effect. Mom, I said quietly, would have never let a lit candle sit unattended next to books. She would have never moved her painting to the garage or used my room for storage. She would have never erased me. Emma looked away. Guilty, maybe, but not enough to stop her next line. You think money makes you right? I leaned in, steady and cold. No, but deeds do. And I own the house. You're just squatting in someone else's grief. Her eyes filled. I walked away. By day 25, Dad finally responded. Not with an apology, with a lawyer. An email arrived at 8:15 a.m. My client, Richard Morgan, wishes to explore all legal remedies to remain in the property under implied tenancy terms, based on years of residence and investment in the family estate. It took me 3 reads to absorb the absurdity. Investment. His investment was mowing the lawn twice a year. Samuel replied on my behalf. Ownership is sole and documented. There is no tenancy agreement, verbal or written. Occupants are trespassing post-deadline. Removal procedures will begin if property is not vacated by day 30. We added a copy of the burn photos and a screenshot of Emma's live stream. I knew what would come next. Guilt. Deflection. Tears. But I didn't expect the letter, left on my desk at home. No envelope. Just folded neatly in half. It was from Dad. The handwriting was shaky. You always were the smart one, Lena. The planner. The fixer. I should have seen this coming when you were 10 and built that backyard fort with a budget and a blueprint. But I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. I thought you'd outgrown the need for family, that you had your city, your job, your ambition. Emma needed more. I let her take more, and now you're taking it all back. I won't stop you, but I won't forgive you either. I read it 3 times, then folded it and placed it in my drawer, behind a stack of tax files. Not because it mattered, but because it proved something. Even in a letter, he couldn't say sorry. Day 26 arrived with no noise, no visitors, no online tantrums, no boxes stacked on the porch. They were still pretending this wasn't real, that I wouldn't go through with it. But they were wrong, because I had already scheduled the locksmith, booked the cleaners, arranged for rekeying, and authorized Samuel to file for trespassing removal if they missed the deadline. They thought I was bluffing, but this time, I wasn't saving anyone but myself. Day 30. I woke up before sunrise. Not from an alarm, I hadn't set one. I just couldn't sleep. The kind of alertness your body summons when it knows something final is about to happen. I got dressed in silence. Dark jeans, gray sweater, hair tied back. I didn't want to look powerful. I didn't want to look broken either. I just wanted to look like someone who was done. At 7:00 a.m. sharp, I arrived at the house. This time, I didn't park around the block. I pulled into the driveway I paid to fix, stepped onto the porch I paid to rebuild, and knocked on the door of the house I legally owned. No answer. I knocked again. Still silence. Then, the door creaked open slowly, deliberately. Emma stood there. No makeup, eyes puffy, hair in a messy bun. She looked like someone who hadn't slept either. Are you here to gloat? She said, voice cracking. No, I replied. I'm here because it's time. Inside. The house was semi-packed. Boxes by the staircase, suitcases in the hallway, garbage bags stuffed with clothes. But not all of it. The study still had books on the shelves. The guest bedrooms still had their bedding. The fridge still hummed with groceries. They weren't ready. And it was 7:00 a.m. on the final day. I took a breath. The locksmith will be here by 3 p.m. Whatever isn't out by then stays. Emma flinched. You're serious? I've never been more serious. She didn't cry. Not then. She just turned and walked upstairs without another word. I stepped into the living room. That's where I found Dad, sitting in Mom's armchair. The same chair that had been stained by wine, scorched by careless candles, then cleaned up and left like nothing ever happened. He didn't stand. He just looked at me, old, smaller somehow, like someone deflating slowly. You really going through with this? He asked. I nodded. You knew this was coming. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He just looked tired. You think I'm a bad father? He said. I didn't answer right away, because part of me still wanted to lie, to say no just to make things easier. But easier was how we got here. I think you were a good father. Until you weren't. His jaw clenched. Until I chose her. I stayed quiet. That silence said more than words ever could. He stood slowly, joints cracking, and walked toward the mantel. Picked up an old photo, the three of us, years ago, before Mom passed. Emma on his shoulders, me holding Mom's hand. I lost your mother, he said. I didn't want to lose her, too. He turned back to me. But in doing that, I lost you. My throat tightened. But I didn't cry. Not yet. There's still time to undo this, he added. Keep the house. Let us stay. We'll pay rent. We'll fix the damage. We'll do it your way. I looked at him for a long time. The man who taught me how to ride a bike, who grilled burgers in the backyard, who used to write math equations on napkins during breakfast. But he wasn't that man anymore. That man died with Mom. What was left was someone who had grown comfortable excusing disrespect as family. I stepped closer. You had 30 days. You did nothing. And now you want to rewrite the ending. It's not too late. Yes, I said gently. It is at 2:00 p.m. I returned with Carlos. He changed the locks quietly. Professionally, no grand scene, no shouts. Just the click of deadbolts turning and a new set of keys pressed into my palm. By then, Dad and Emma were gone. A few bags left in the driveway, one suitcase left unlocked on the porch. A forgotten sandal by the back steps. I didn't touch it. I walked through the house slowly. Each room felt like a breath finally being exhaled. The dining room where I once lit candles for Mom's birthday. The hallway where I taped up my college acceptance letter. The study my study now with a burn on the wall and a quiet promise. Never let anyone take your peace and call it love. I stood in the center of the house, phone in hand, and I didn't text them. I didn't update social media. I didn't say a word. Because this wasn't a win. This was a release. As I was about to leave, something caught my eye on the kitchen counter. A note. Folded. Simple. No envelope. My name written in Dad's shaky hand. We're out. I hope one day you remember the good more than the bad. But if you don't, I understand. Emma doesn't. She's angry. I think she always will be. But I'm not. I'm just sorry I let it get this far. Take care. Lena. Dad. I placed the note in the drawer. Not to treasure it, but to remember that even regrets, when they come too late, are still echoes, not answers. That night, I slept. Deeply. Dreamlessly. Not because everything was healed, but because the noise was finally gone. The silence was deafening. Not the kind that comforts. The kind that lingers after an explosion when the dust hasn't settled. And your ears still ring from everything that was said. And everything that wasn't. The house was mine again. But it didn't feel like it. It felt like a museum, full of echoes. Ghosts that didn't haunt, but didn't leave. Either. The first night after the eviction, I didn't unpack. I didn't rearrange furniture. I didn't celebrate. I just stood in the center of the empty living room listening. It was so still I could hear the old pipes tick in the walls. I expected to feel triumph. Instead, I felt weightless, unmoored, like I'd won a war and forgotten what I was supposed to do with peace. 3 days passed before I spoke to anyone. I ignored every call, every text, every knock, until my cousin Melissa messaged me. Not a guilt trip, not a lecture, just this. Hey, I heard what happened. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. I don't know. She replied within seconds. That's okay. Do you want to get coffee? No family talk. Just caffeine and silence. If you want. We met the next morning. A quiet corner cafe. No reporters. No whispers. Just two women with shared blood and vastly different experiences. Melissa ordered her usual chai. Oat milk. Extra cinnamon. I ordered black coffee. No cream. No sugar. We sat in silence for 3 full minutes. Then she looked at me. You didn't deserve any of that. You know. I didn't answer. I mean, it. Lena, I've seen how they treat you. I've seen how they twist things and call it love. I nodded. Slowly. It wasn't always like this. It wasn't always honest, either, she said. That conversation opened a door I hadn't realized was locked. Over the next week, a few more people reached out. Aunt Celeste, my college friend Drew, even one of Dad's old neighbors who'd quietly watched from afar. I always thought it was odd, she said over email, how often you were missing from the family events. Didn't seem right. Each message chipped away at the illusion that I had been the problem. Each message was a reminder. People noticed, even when I thought no one saw me, but with support came backlash. 2. Emma posted a TikTok, a montage of her crying on the front steps, music swelling. A caption that read, "When the one person you thought would never hurt you becomes the reason you lose everything." It got over 0 views in 24 hours. The comments were split. She stole your house. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. This is why older sisters are bitter. I didn't reply, didn't correct, didn't justify, because the version of me they were commenting on, she didn't exist. She was a character in Emma's story, not mine. And Dad, radio silence. Not a call, not an email, not even a forwarded article like he used to send, titled, 7 Signs You're Too Hard on Yourself. I wasn't sure what I missed more, his absence or his flawed attempts at presence. One night, around 11:30 p.m., I found myself wandering the house in the dark. No lights, just moonlight spilling through old windows. I ended up in the study. The burn mark was still there, a jagged shadow beneath the socket. I sat down in Mom's chair. No candles this time. No books. Just quiet. I ran my hand along the armrest. Felt the groove where her ring used to tap when she turned pages. It still felt like her, even after everything. And maybe that's what saved me. The next morning, I opened a folder I'd been avoiding. Estate Restoration, Phase 2. The plan I had drafted last year: new paint, updated lighting, fireplace repair, study window replacement. I opened the spreadsheet, breathed in, and added one more line. Repair fire damage in study. Keep original floor. A small note, typed beside it. Some things should be preserved even when they've been hurt. Later that day, I got a message from an unknown number. The text read, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but thank you for not going public. You could have ruined me. You didn't. I don't know who I am without the house. It was Emma. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because for the first time in our lives, I wasn't going to carry her pain for her. I did reply to Melissa, though. Hey, I think I'm ready to have people over. Small dinner. Quiet. Just real people. She replied instantly, I'll bring dessert. That night, I lit a single candle in the study, not a cheap one. A handcrafted lavender soy candle Mom used to keep in the hall closet. I lit it and watched it flicker, not near the books this time. Far from the danger, but close enough to remind me, fire can destroy, but it can also illuminate. It was a Tuesday, not a holiday, not a birthday. Just a Tuesday, but for me, it felt like something bigger, because for the first time in years, I was inviting people into my house by choice, not obligation. No fake smiles, no history hanging in the air like unspoken debt. Just a dinner with people who saw me as I am, not who they needed me to be. The guest list was small, on purpose. Melissa, Drew, my college friend, Aunt Celeste, who hadn't picked sides when everything went nuclear, and Sophia, my neighbor 2 doors down, who once brought me soup when I looked tired in the elevator. That was it. 4 people, 1 table, no scripts. I spent the morning cleaning, but not obsessively. I didn't overthink the plates or fold napkins into birds. I didn't decorate like I was trying to impress ghosts. I just wanted it to feel soft. So I lit candles, safe ones, played old jazz records Mom used to hum along to, and let the air smell like rosemary, not resentment. Melissa arrived first. She hugged me tight and held on longer than expected. Wow, she said, stepping inside. It feels peaceful in here. I smiled. Not because I felt peaceful, but because it was the first time in a long time someone noticed what I had created, not what I had survived. Drew brought wine expensive, aged, and deeply unnecessary. If we're breaking generational curses, he said with a wink, we're doing it in style. Aunt Celeste showed up with a homemade pie and a long look in her eyes. You remind me of your mother when she stopped pleasing everyone, she whispered. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said thank you. Dinner was roasted chicken, lemon potatoes, salad with too much feta, and store-bought rolls because I forgot to bake. Nobody complained. Nobody noticed. Because we were too busy laughing, actual laughter. Not the tight kind you use to diffuse tension, the kind that escapes when your chest finally loosens. We talked about nothing and everything. Melissa told stories about her chaotic new job. Drew confessed to going on a date with someone who quoted their own tweets. Celeste sipped her wine like she was in a French novel and kept calling everyone darling. And me, I sat back and listened. Listened to voices in my house that didn't raise volume, twist facts, or weaponize guilt. It was new and terrifying and beautiful. After dessert, we moved to the study. The burn mark on the floor had been covered with a small rug, but I didn't hide it. In fact, I told them about it. This room almost went up in flames, I said, pouring another glass of wine. A candle. Negligence. They covered it up. Melissa frowned. They could have burned the whole house. They nearly did. I replied, not just about the fire. Celeste reached out and squeezed my hand. But you didn't let it fall. Sophia joined late with store-bought tiramisu and warm eyes. She apologized for being underdressed. I told her I was just glad she came. She sat next to me and looked around the study. It feels like someone actually lives here now, she said. Before, it felt curated, like a showroom. She was right, because it had been a showroom. For years, I had tried to curate comfort. Now, I was just allowing it. Before everyone left, I handed out small brown paper bags. Each had a photo inside copies of old family pictures I had scanned, restored, and reprinted. But only the ones that felt safe. Only the ones where I was smiling for real. The moments before the fractures. Before performance replaced presence. Melissa held hers to her chest. You kept these. I almost threw them out. I admitted. But I decided to keep what still felt true. After they left, I stood alone in the kitchen. No wine buzz. No melancholy. Just quiet gratitude. The same kitchen where Dad once told me I was too cold. Where Emma laughed while making cupcakes I wasn't allowed to eat, because they were for the family. Now, it was where I cooked for the people who showed up, not the ones who expected me to chase them. I turned off the lights one by one, each room settling, each wall breathing, and in that darkness, I heard something new. Not silence, but space, room for something different. Not family, by blood, but family, by choice. A week passed. Then another. The house grew quieter, but not in that hollow way. More like it was settling, healing, breathing again after years of holding its breath. I started leaving the windows open during the day, letting in light, fresh air, the scent of rosemary from the garden. I was beginning to feel something unfamiliar, safe, until the letter arrived. It was a Tuesday again. Tuesdays seemed to carry weight in my story. A thin white envelope slipped between credit card offers and a subscription renewal I forgot to cancel. No return address, just my name, Lena Morgan, written in careful, slanted handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it, ran my thumb over the seal, tried to ignore the way my heart shifted in my chest. But my body knew. Before my mind caught up, my body knew. It was from her. I sat at the kitchen table, no music, no distractions, and opened it. Lena, if you're reading this, it means I did what I promised. I let go. I know I'm not supposed to write. I know I said I wouldn't. But I also know that silence, like everything else in our family, becomes a kind of weapon. I don't want to hurt you anymore, but I do want to say something I couldn't say when we were screaming. I was angry because you held a mirror to me. You made me see the version of myself I didn't want to admit existed, the one who took, who twisted, who believed love was a transaction I was owed. You were right to evict us. You were right to draw the line. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Not for the social media posts. Not even for the party. I'm sorry for erasing you. Love. Emma. I sat for a long time, staring at those last words. Love. Emma. The same woman who once told a cousin I always had a savior complex. The same woman who wore my mother's apron like a costume. Who turned my house into a set for pity content. And now this. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just folded the letter, placed it in the drawer with Dad's note. Not because I forgave her, but because some truths deserve to be acknowledged even if they come late. That night, I walked out to the garden. The roses were blooming again. Red, white, a few yellow Mom's favorite. I sat on the edge of the stone path, remembering the afternoon I first brought her ashes here. How I planted the first bush with shaking hands, and how Emma stayed in the car. I read the letter again under moonlight. The ink looked softer in the dark. I thought about writing back. Just a sentence. Even just, I got it. But I didn't, because Emma hadn't asked for a reply, and I had nothing to offer but quiet recognition. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's the only thing that's safe to give. The next day, Melissa called. You okay? I told her about the letter. She was silent for a moment. Do you want to see her? I shook my head. No, but I want to stop seeing her everywhere else. In my decisions, in my second guessing, in my resistance to joy. That's fair, she said. But that letter, it's something. It was not a door opening, but maybe a window cracking, letting in a little more air. Later that week, I visited a local woodworker, an older man named Vincent who specialized in antique restoration. I brought a photo of the burned desk in the study. Can you fix it? I asked. He studied the image, nodded. I can, but it'll still carry the scar. Good, I said. I want it to. I left the shop feeling strangely light, not healed, but present. On the way home, I drove past a street fair. Kids screaming, lights flashing, the smell of popcorn and fried dough in the air. And for the first time in years, I didn't look away. I parked, bought a lemonade, sat alone on a bench watching the swirl of strangers, people unburdened by legacy, expectation, betrayal, just people, moving, laughing, existing, and I whispered a truth out loud. I'm not angry anymore, just free. The desk arrived on a Thursday, 3 months after I left it in Vincent's shop, wrapped in bubble wrap and shadowed guilt. He texted me that morning. It's ready. She's got her dignity back. I smiled at the message, called him, and told him I'd be home all day. When he and his assistant rolled it in through the front door, I nearly didn't recognize it. Gone was the deep gouge along the right corner. The burn near the leg had been sanded, stained, sealed, not erased, but softened. A faint line still remained a dark crescent in the grain. I ran my hand along it gently. Vincent watched me. I can try again. Cover that last scar. I shook my head. Leave it. I want it there. Battle mark. Memory, I said. We placed it back in the study, exactly where it had been before the fire, before the party, before everything cracked open. I rearranged the shelves, restacked the books, refilled the top drawer with fresh stationery, my mother's fountain pen, and a photo of us baking when I was 12. She had flour on her cheek. I had braces. We were both laughing. It was the last time we made something messy together and called it beautiful. When Vincent left, I made tea, sat down at the desk, and opened the window beside it. A breeze swept through the curtains. The garden swayed, and I, for the first time in years, felt still. Restoration isn't about returning something to its original state. It's about honoring what it survived. The house had survived them. So had I. Now, it was time to restore myself. I started with small things, clearing out the last boxes in the hallway, donating what didn't feel like mine anymore, keeping what sparked peace, not guilt. I replaced the old doormat, not with something cute or clever, just one word, welcome. But this time, it wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. I opened the guest room, the one Emma had turned into her wardrobe annex, repainted the walls a soft sage green, Bought clean linens. Put a plant in the corner. I called it the neutral room. No history. No ghosts. A place where anyone could breathe, including myself. One afternoon, while going through the attic, I found a box labeled Mom unopened. Inside was a bundle of letters, all addressed to me. None of them sent. Some were unfinished. Some dated before her diagnosis. One began, "Dear Lena, in case I don't get to say everything." I stopped there, not because I couldn't keep reading, but because I realized something. I didn't need all her words to understand her love. It lived in the way she whispered, "I'm proud of you," before school. In the smell of lemon balm on her sweater. In the careful way she folded every corner of a photo album. She'd already said what mattered. I closed the box, placed it on the middle shelf of the study, not to forget, but to preserve. A week later, Melissa visited again. We sat at the restored desk, sipping tea like two women who knew the price of silence and the power of claiming space. She looked around. "It feels different now," she said. "It is," I replied. "Is it weird, being here alone?" I thought for a moment. It was, I admitted. But now it feels like mine, not just legally, emotionally. She nodded slowly. "That's rarer than people think." That night, I wrote my first letter in years. To myself. "Dear Lena, you survived what tried to hollow you. You rebuilt what others tried to rename. You stayed soft when bitterness was easier. And now, you are not just the owner of a house. You are the architect of your peace." I folded it, placed it in the drawer beside Mom's pen. No one else would ever read it, but I would always remember it was there. It happened on a Sunday morning, the kind where the sky is just gray enough to keep you in pajamas till noon, and the smell of coffee feels like a hug. I was folding laundry when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail the way I had with so many calls during the storm. But something in me said, "Pick up," so I did. And before I could say hello, I heard, "It's Dad." 3 words. Soft, unsure, heavy. I didn't speak. Neither did he for a full 5 seconds. "I didn't know if you'd answer," he added quietly. "I wasn't sure I would," I said. Silence again. The kind that stretched, like a tightrope between what we were and what we'd become. He cleared his throat. "I got your card." I blinked, then remembered I had mailed him a simple Christmas card 3 weeks ago. No message, no photo, just his name, my handwriting, and a small line. "Wishing you peace this season." I wasn't expecting anything, he continued. Especially not that. I let him sit with the discomfort, because it wasn't my job to make it easier anymore. "You always were better at silence than me," he said. "But I think I used mine to punish. You used yours to heal." That made me pause. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged the difference. "I'm not calling to fix everything," he added. "I know some things stay broken." "Not broken," I said. "Just different," he exhaled. "Emma's doing better. Working part-time. Living smaller." I nodded, though he couldn't see it. "And you?" he asked. "I'm learning how to live without bracing for impact." I said honestly. "It's strange, but good." He chuckled, not out of humor, out of habit. "That house, it was your mother's heart, you know?" "I know," I said. "That's why I stayed. And that's why I let go." Another pause. "Do you ever think we could sit at that table again? Just once. Talk, not fight." I looked out the window. The garden was blooming again, red, white, yellow. The rosemary hedges were trimmed. The bench Mom loved was still standing. "One day," I said. "Just not today." He didn't argue, didn't beg. He just said, "I'll wait." And for the first time in years, it didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like something else. Maybe humility, maybe grief, maybe love. Finally unclenched. We hung up without a goodbye, and for once, it didn't feel incomplete. That afternoon, I lit a candle in the study. Lavender. Clean. Not as tribute, but as routine. I sat at the desk and opened my journal. Wrote only 1 sentence. "When the people who burned you stop asking for firewood, that's the beginning." Later that night, I walked the halls of the house. Each room whispered different things now. Not apologies, not resentment, just memories. Some painful, some warm, all of them. Honest. I stopped at the staircase. There, taped to the underside of the railing, a small, curled piece of paper, faded ink, Mom's handwriting. When you can't fix it, hold it with care. I smiled. She always left treasures where I least expected. The knock came late, not middle of the night urgent, but late enough to make me cautious. I checked the peephole. Melissa. She held an envelope in her hand and a look on her face that said, "You're going to want to sit down." "It came to me by mistake," she said. Stepping inside, forwarded through the family lawyer. "Should have gone to you months ago." She handed me the envelope. No postage, just my name. In script I recognized immediately. My mother's. I stared at it for a long time. My palms went cold, then warm, then cold again. Melissa didn't push. She just sat down at the kitchen table, folding her hands like this was a vigil. I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. Inside, a single sheet of creamy paper, folded twice. No letterhead, just ink. In her steady, even handwriting. "My dearest Lena, if you're reading this, I'm no longer here, but you've always been the one I trusted to find meaning, even in silence. This house, our house, is full of stories, some loud, some buried, some unfinished. You will be tempted to make it perfect. You will be tempted to carry what others refuse to. But this is my true wish. Let the house be yours. Let the peace be yours. Let the love you give be enough, not a bargaining chip. There are things I couldn't protect you from, people I couldn't shield you against. But I saw you, every time, even when others didn't. My hope is that you walk through these rooms without asking who you need to be to deserve them. You already do. Love always. Mom." I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, holding the paper to my chest, trying to breathe through the crack in my heart. Melissa reached across the table, wordless. That letter, it wasn't long. It didn't list assets. No legal jargon. No keys or combinations. Just permission. The one thing I never realized I'd needed from her. Later that night, I found the folder labeled Estate, Secondary. I'd skimmed it once after her death, back when grief made everything look like paperwork. But now I saw it with clearer eyes. Inside were a few pages, an updated will, instructions for the garden, a page marked to be opened by Lena only. It wasn't dramatic, just a handwritten inventory of small things she hoped I'd keep. Her gardening shears, the cookbook with the chocolate stain on page 84, the wind chime from our trip to Carmel, and the desk specifically marked, "Restore if damaged." It's her anchor. I read that line 5 times. Her anchor. It was never about the furniture, or the title, or who threw the bigger family gathering. It was always about memory, legacy, respect, and choice. She had chosen me quietly, fully, long before lawyers or signatures ever confirmed it. The next morning, I went into the garden and clipped 3 roses, one red, one yellow, one white. I placed them in a mason jar, set them on the desk in the study, and whispered, "I'm still here. I've always been." That weekend, I finally opened the guest book from the party Emma threw. Yes, I kept it. Out of curiosity, maybe out of masochism. Most of it was fluff. So good to see everyone. Family is everything. But on the second to last page, scribbled sideways, I found this. "Lena, I know this wasn't your idea. I also know you're probably never going to read this. But I hope one day you remember that not everyone forgot you. You were the reason I kept coming back. Jenny." I closed the book. Not everything had been fake. Not everyone had looked the other way. And that meant something. I sat at the desk and opened my journal. Wrote only this. "Real inheritance is knowing what not to pass down." I used to think closure was loud. A final confrontation. A slammed door. A speech that rewrites the story and silences the room. But closure isn't always cinematic. Sometimes it's just what's left and what you choose to carry forward. It started with a box, not a metaphorical one. A literal, dusty cardboard box marked MISC. I found it in the garage, buried beneath tangled holiday lights and a broken cooler. Inside were fragments, old keys, expired warranties, faded Polaroids, letters without envelopes, newspaper clippings from my high school science fair. At first, I smiled. Then I froze. Tucked near the bottom was a note, written in my father's unmistakable blocky handwriting. For Lena, in case I never get the words right. I sat cross-legged on the cold concrete floor and opened it. You were always the one who asked questions. The one who saw through things I tried to hide. I know you think I didn't love you the same, but I did. I just didn't know how to love someone who didn't need me to fix things for her. I paused. That line hit somewhere raw. Your mother understood you better. She let you lead. I tried to make you follow. And when you didn't, I blamed you for the distance I created. I hope one day you forgive me. But even if you don't, I hope you know I see you now. And I'm proud of the woman you became, even if I never said it to your face. I folded the letter. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. I just breathed. Because sometimes, acknowledgement even delayed carries more healing than apology. That night, I lit a fire in the backyard pit. Not to burn anything, but to mark the turning point. I invited no one, made tea, wrapped myself in an old quilt, and stared at the flames. Behind me, a house no longer full of ghosts. Inside me, the faint but growing feeling of peace. The next morning, I made a list. What I'm keeping? The house, the desk, the garden, the letters, the friendships that stayed, my voice, my right to peace without performance. What I'm releasing, the guilt, the need to explain, the question of why they didn't choose me, the hope that they'll suddenly become who I needed, the narrative that strength means staying silent. I framed the letter from my mother, hung it inside the study, just above the desk. No spotlight, no announcement, just there, a quiet compass. And beneath it, I placed a small wooden plaque with a single word. Enough. Melissa came by later that week with a surprise. A scrapbook, one she'd been compiling for months. Photos of us growing up. Birthday cards. Clippings from school. Notes I'd written to her in junior high when we passed messages during math. On the final page, she'd left a quote in calligraphy. You don't owe your healing to the people who broke you. I hugged her tighter than I'd ever hugged anyone. The next morning, I stood at the top of the stairs, sipping coffee. The sun cast perfect shadows on the floorboards. And I thought to myself, this house used to feel like a cage. Now it feels like a story I finished writing. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it. Emma stood there, hair down, hands empty, eyes unsure. I'm not here to fight, she said. I'm just trying to figure out who I am without the drama. I didn't move, didn't speak. I'm not asking for anything, she added. But I left something here. I think something small. I nodded once. Come in. She walked in slowly, looking around like a stranger visiting a museum that used to be her home. She didn't touch anything, didn't say much. But as she passed the study, she paused, looked at the desk, then at the plaque. She swallowed. You kept it. I restored it, I said. She nodded. It's beautiful, just like she'd want. Then she left. No meltdown, no apology. Just that, and it was enough. I sat down at the desk again, pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, and wrote, this is what remains. The room I reclaimed, the voice I found, the peace I built, and the truth that I don't need to be part of their story to finally own mine. It wasn't on purpose. The date. I didn't plan to host anything on the 1-year anniversary of the eviction, but sometimes life circles back without your permission. Not to haunt you, but to remind you how far you've come. It was Melissa who pointed it out. You realize this weekend makes a full year, right? Since you took the house back. I blinked, then nodded. Feels like a lifetime ago, I said. Or maybe just your real life beginning. She replied. The idea started simple. A small garden dinner. No hashtags. No speeches. No one trying to prove anything. Just people who showed up again and again with steady hearts and clean hands. I sent 6 invitations. All by hand. No text. No email. Just cardstock and soft ink. The message was short. Dinner in the garden, to mark what we keep and what we've let go. Saturday came, and with it sunshine, the kind of light that kisses the edges of leaves and makes everything feel like forgiveness. I wore a linen dress Mom would have liked. Simple, unapologetically mine. The table was wooden, slightly weathered, no tablecloth. I placed rosemary bundles on each plate, not as garnish, as memory. Drew brought wine again. This time, no joke about curses, just a quiet toast to boundaries that made room for better beginnings. Melissa smiled across the table. Her eyes said, "You did it." I smiled back, saying nothing, because I didn't need words to know what I had built. Sophia brought her new partner, a soft-spoken artist who complimented the floorboards. Aunt Celeste arrived late, as always, with apricot pie and unsolicited advice. "If you ever sell this place, I'll disown you," she said, scooping a slice. "Noted." I laughed. As the sun dipped behind the hedges, I stood and looked around. It wasn't a party. It was a homecoming. But not for anyone else. For me, I made a small speech. Not rehearsed. Not performative. Just true. This house has held a lot. Anger, silence, laughter, fire. But today it holds something softer. Choice. The choice to stop carrying what wasn't mine. And the choice to believe I am enough without the approval I used to beg for. There was no applause, just raised glasses, and the sound of wind through the trees. After dessert, Melissa helped me light candles in the garden. She paused by the rosemary bush. "They came back stronger this year," she said. "They always do," I replied. Later, I sat on the bench near the rose bush, alone. The party had ended. The plates were stacked. The laughter still lingered in the soil. I looked up at the house, its windows glowing warm, not haunted, not guarded, just open, like me. I thought about Dad, Emma, the letters, the fights, the silence, and I realized I didn't need a resolution, because this was resolution, the kind you don't wait for, the kind you create. I opened my journal and wrote, "Healing is not a destination, it's a homecoming. To yourself. Every house has one, a door you avoid, a drawer you never open, a corner you pass a little too quickly." For me, it was the attic, not because it was haunted, but because it held the version of me I used to be, the girl who wanted to be good enough, grateful enough, quiet enough. The attic was filled with things that hadn't made it into my healing. That didn't deserve a place in the story I was writing now, but I knew I couldn't leave it unopened forever. So on a quiet Sunday, 1 year and 5 weeks after everything unraveled, I went up the stairs and opened the last door. The air was still, not musty. Mom always kept cedar blocks tucked in corners, still working. Even now, the boxes were labeled, stacked neatly. Of course they were. She had been organized even in grief. I sat cross-legged on the wooden floor and opened one marked Lena, 1996. Inside, a spelling bee ribbon, a birthday card from Dad that said, "You're my #1 brain." A dried daisy in wax paper, a note beside it. "Your first gift to me, age 7. And a camcorder tape, labeled, "Lena, backyard speech." July 4th. I smiled. That day came rushing back. I had stood on a folding chair in a red plastic tiara and declared to the family, "One day, I'm going to be in charge. And when I am, everyone has to be nice." They had all laughed. Not mockingly, not meanly. Back then, it was still safe to be bold. I found the old camcorder in another box. Plugged it in. It still worked. I watched myself on a tiny screen, full of certainty and innocence. Not hardened, not wary. Just me. Before they made me question it. Before I tried to shrink into something more palatable. Before love became a negotiation. I didn't cry. I felt proud. Because somewhere along the way, I had become exactly what that little girl believed I could. In charge. Not of others. Of myself. I gathered 3 items from the attic. The red tiara, the birthday card from Dad, and the daisy now fragile, but intact. I placed them in a shadow box, hung it near the study, a tribute, not to pain, to proof that I had always been enough, that nothing they took had ever truly dimmed my light, that I had come home. That night, I stood at the front door of the house, looked out at the street, the same sidewalk they once decorated for National Day without me, the same curb they left my things beside when I didn't agree with their version of family. I stood in the doorway now, not to leave, but to welcome myself inside. I made tea, sat at the desk, lit a candle, wrote my final entry in the journal. I started the day I reclaimed the house. I opened the last door, and it didn't hurt, because healing isn't about forgetting, it's about being able to look at the wound without flinching, and knowing it's part of you, but it no longer defines you. Sometimes the loudest revenge is silence, and sometimes the greatest victory is peace. Each episode is a slow burn of suspicion, sorrow, and strength. And when justice finally comes, it doesn't knock, it shatters. Are you ready to listen to the next voices that were silenced? Subscribe now to step into tales where the wounds are real, the pain is raw, and the revenge is unforgettable.